Welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. Today's guest is Steve Bergier, a certified facilitator for SMART Recovery meetings in Orange County, California. His experience with both AA and SMART provide him a unique perspective on recovery that I think you'll enjoy hearing. Steve is not an official SMART Recovery spokesperson, and his commentary is his own opinion. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Oh, fine, thanks.
Thank you for contributing your article that will be published tomorrow. And thank you also for agreeing to do this podcast. I've been looking forward to it. I think I'm going to learn a lot.
Well, thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. In your article that you wrote, you're talking about your experience in AA and that, you know, it was difficult for you. You didn't have any agnostic meetings that were nearby in your community. So rather than fight it, you decided to go out and try something different, which you did. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, sure. Not to dismiss 12-step, I did go for 12 years and had a lot of sobriety built up. But eventually my enthusiasm for the program waned and I sort of drifted away and just stopped going. I maintained my sobriety for several years after, but eventually relapsed and decided to return to 12-step and achieved again a couple of years of sobriety, but I had a growing discontent with the program. I've been, atheist, agnostic, whatever you want to call it, like since high school, before I got in trouble with drugs. And when I first got sober, I was told I needed to comply with this program in order to stay sober. And somehow I managed to putz along and stuff, but I never really worked the steps or was enthusiastic about the program, but I did stay sober. So whatever influence they had, I am very grateful for.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the article that, and I agree with you on this, it was the fellowship that was the great strength of AA. I wonder, have you ever heard of John Stewart? He has a blog that's called Leaving AA.
To be honest, the first contact or knowledge I've had of him was listening to your podcast with his interview.
Well, your experience reminds me a lot of his, and your attitude and your approach reminds me a lot of his. He's a really sharp guy, but you know, AA wasn't doing it for him either. So, but he likes cognitive behavioral therapy, but he doesn't dismiss AA outright and finds parts of it useful. And I saw that with you too. But so anyway, I'm kind of interested in learning about what you went to SMART was your choice after leaving.
Yeah, correct. I found myself kind of complaining about the program and not being happy there and putting out a lot of negativity at the meeting. So I decided I needed to put my, money where my mouth was, I guess. And so I decided to look into the SMART Recovery Program. And I started going to a meeting and stopped going to 12-step altogether. And after about 6 months in this one meeting, I decided to become a facilitator. You can get the training at smartrecovery.org and, eventually, hopefully leading a meeting of your own.
Okay. You can do the training online?
Correct. They have a facilitator training. They teach you for about a 6-week course. They say a total of about 35 hours of reading, watching videos, listening to audios, and taking quizzes, that sort of stuff. It's a very good training in the program. And I often advise my meeting attendees just to take it, even if you never intend on doing facilitating meetings, just for a firm grounding in the program.
So what's it like for somebody? What was it like for you to go to your first SMART meeting?
One characteristic that I really like of SMART is they encourage everyone to share. They don't make it mandatory. They allow you to pass or not share. Right. But everybody gets a little input if they choose. And I've been to many an AA meeting where there seems to be a core group of regulars, and it's hard for newcomers to sort of break in. But SMART has this what they call the check-in, where you go around the room and everybody gets to check in with how they're doing and things. And so I like that inclusiveness about it.
Yeah. Is it as social as AA like that, or do you feel more like you're, I don't know, is it more like therapy type thing when you get there?
Well, another feature is that they allow crosstalk.
Right.
So the meetings can often resemble, especially during the middle discussion period, a group therapy.
Right.
And although SMART is the first to admit that they don't claim to be a substitute for professional therapy,
right?
But they do have crosstalk with everybody putting in, and so it is a little more of a group involvement.
Yeah, I've actually done a group therapy before, and that was actually very helpful for me. And there was some, you could actually talk to the other people that were in therapy with you, and have something to say about whatever's going on with their situation. So anyway, I'm just kind of looking at the meeting format that you had sent me, and where you open up the meeting, and they do mention that the meetings are confidential, just like, AA, you don't have to worry about your privacy being violated. And also, it's for any addiction.
Correct. We will even welcome like gamblers, people with other sort of behavioral addictions. The oddest one, and it turns out it was a great contribution to the group, was a gentleman who came in and said he was addicted to, he was kind of a rageaholic. And what brought him in was he had a road rage incident. The next thing you know, he looks back and his kids who are strapped in the back seat are just bawling their eyes out, and they're really scared of their dad. And so he decided to seek help in a meeting. And, I think it helped him out and realize what he can do to, some simple cognitive behavioral techniques to, diffuse that road rage.
What's the background of SMART? How did it start?
Well, SMART started out as what was called rational recovery.
Okay.
Back when, and in the 90s, it says they severed ties with rational recovery, and became SMART, and basically adopted cognitive behavioral tools, which were developed, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, et cetera, to addiction. The cognitive behavioral therapy was developed more for anyone with, psychological issues that they wanted to get therapy for. And they adapted these tools to use, for addicts. And, they've been slow growing. They've been around for a little over 20 years. And, again, like in the county where I live, we have over 1,200 AA meetings and 4 SMART meetings. So we're still quite small.
Yeah. Something that was also interesting when I was at the SMART website, and I think it was actually your website, they actually have links to the other programs that people can go to, whereas AA doesn't do that. They won't ever put a link to SMART on their website, which is too bad, because I think that a lot of AAs could benefit from this.
Well, the SMART attitude is that whatever works for you. Even in like San Diego County near me, that's the home of Tom Harvath, who's the president of SMART, and so there's been a lot of meetings there, and it is theoretically possible to someone just to go to SMART meetings any day of the week and do their recovery. But even in that county, about half of the people who go to SMART also go to AA or NA or some other 12-step. So the SMART feeling is that you do what you need to, to stay sober. And you can benefit from, even in AA, they say, take what you want and leave the rest. So go to AA and take what you want.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big advantage of AA, again, not just the numbers of meetings, but they do have the sponsorship system,
Mm-hmm.
and SMART does not have that, and they do have it's been around long enough that there's a lot of socialization, picnics and barbecues.
Yeah,
There's
right.
a lot of things like that going on, which as of now is pretty minimal in SMART.
Yeah, that's very true about AA. There's a lot of social stuff, which I'm starting to get more and more involved in all the time.
Yeah, and regardless of what program you're in, it's useful to have sober friends, after
Absolutely.
hours, not just during meetings.
Yep. I read that the more people that you have in your life that support your abstinence, the more likely you are to succeed in that.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
So I'm looking also at, you're talking about some of the differences between SMART and 12-step programs. And one of the differences is the 12-step programs, emphasize, we're powerless, whereas SMART is self-empowering. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
About that difference?
I admit when I first went to 12-step and I, heard the first step and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I was a little perplexed. What do they mean by this? And I came to believe, or at least my definition was that once you start drinking or using or whatever, you really cannot control what events might happen the rest of the time.
Right.
You can be out of control just with one drink or something, and that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a little more difficulty applying that to periods when I was sober.
Right.
And, I know there are people in AA who feel that you're powerless all the time over over alcohol, but I never quite fit in with that. And what I liked about SMART is it's, again, self-empowering. The S&M of SMART is self-management.
Mm-hmm.
SMART stands for self-management and recovery training. And so you take we view recovery as our own responsibility.
Right.
And we don't, turn it over or rely on a higher power or however you want to call it.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
And essentially, that's
even
really
towards the end when I was going to AA, I would have shares that kind of reflected that. Like, like you may be powerless over alcohol after you take a drink, but you have the power to pick up the phone and call someone before you drink.
Well, I feel the same way about that anyway. I always had a problem with sponsors who told me that I was powerless over people, places, and things. No, I just saw powerless over alcohol as that once I start drinking, I can't control what's going to happen after that. But today I do have some power over whether or not I decide to drink. But I think it's good to emphasize that. I think that people in AA could benefit from a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and towards the end of my going to AA, my shares really were reflecting a lot of that sort of philosophy.
Another thing, and I find this interesting because we had an experience at our group, a young lady coming to meetings, and she hated that introduction of I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. At SMART, you don't label yourselves.
Correct. We don't think they're helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's reasonable to have people accept that they have as they define it in the DSM-5, a substance abuse problem.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they choose to define themselves as having a disease, that's their business. In my opinion, it's not helpful. Even if someone has, diabetes, I say, they say I'm a diabetic. And I says, well, you're not a diabetic. You just are a person who has blood sugar problems. You have diabetes. And it really isn't your identity. And the SMART philosophy is that labeling yourself with an issue or a problem can be, again, one of those negative stereotypes that you may apply to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really not helpful.
Yep. Labels can be a bit of a barrier too. I remember because I started having a problem with alcohol pretty early in my life. And when I was 19 years old, I was considering getting help. But that word alcoholic kind of stuck with me. I thought, I'm not an alcoholic. I can't go to AA because I didn't think I was an alcoholic, not even really knowing what one was. But if you don't even have to worry about the label, all you have to do is say, hey, I'm having a problem right now,
Yeah, you just need to come in if you want help. There are a lot of people who will come to SMART because they're just unsure about their drinking. And if they go to AA, they're told you must have a desire to stop drinking. They're not allowed in if they're ambiguous.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people who come in anyways to AA, but they're in SMART. When people come in like that, and it's not uncommon, we'll often discuss their drinking history and how they're doing, and other people will give feedback. And, one of the techniques we'll do is what's called motivational interviewing. And we'll get them to say, are you here because you want to drink moderately, or are you here because you're having problems with drinking? Why did you come here? Is your boss going to fire you? Or, did you get a DUI? And by pointing out to them that they really do have a drinking problem, they're often willing to stay and, go for abstinence.
Yep. And I was reading in the introduction to the handbook, which, by the way, I found amazing. If I had stumbled across that handbook in 1988 when I was starting out, that would have been much more helpful to me than reading There's a Solution in the Big Book, by the way. But it was talking about abstinence as being almost that's an easier approach to take because you don't have to worry about the managing the substance. You don't have to figure out how many is enough and all that type of thing. So that kind of made sense to me.
And again, we go over that, and there's not just like I've quote done abstinence, in the past, and it's literally like, let's say I'll go out for dinner and they'll be having some wine or something, and I'll have a glass or two, and it's literally I'm literally white knuckling it until I can get home and get as really drunk as I want to. It's basically frustrating. When you get a alcohol habit, your brain is used to a certain level of your pleasure center stimulation and dopamine levels and that sort of thing. And having a drink or two is just a teaser.
Yeah.
And your brain wants the full Monty. And that was exactly my experience. So when well-meaning friends or relatives say, oh, come on, can't you just have a glass of wine for dinner? And I said, well, the problem is I don't want a glass of wine. I want a bottle. And then skip the meal and give me another bottle, And that's just the way I am. So abstinence is much easier.
Yeah. But what I also got from that, reading that introduction, I believe it was in that I read, is they distinguish between just a small lapse and a relapse. So, which I thought, because in AA sometimes it can be totally black and white. It's like I had one little sip. My sobriety date has to be changed. I have all that kind of stuff. Whereas, am I getting this right? Whereas with SMART, if you just have a little lapse, it's not that huge. I mean, you had a lapse, move on. Is that? Am I getting that? Understanding that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And there is a little different. A lapse can be described as, let's say, someone does have that glass of wine with dinner, and maybe they didn't follow it up with getting out of control again. But they, came back to the meeting and said, this happened and I felt awful and, I was guilty. But fortunately, I didn't drink after that. And then there are people who get fully back into their, blackout drinking, every day and, come in after, a month or two. And, in both those situations, we may try to, unpack it. What led to that first drink? What happened and what did you learn? And we don't, sobriety time is just not an important thing.
Yeah.
The main thrust is on leading, a healthy, happy, productive life and not worried about when the last drink was or, that sort of thing.
I wonder if that was designed on purpose. When I was talking to John Stewart, he said that it's almost like sometimes in AA that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that, you have in your mind that, one drink is a relapse. And so if a person does
it's almost like they almost feel like they have to just continue
Yeah,
on.
that is an issue, and I think there's been some research to back that up. That when someone in AA does have a lapse, it does tend to progress to a full blown relapse behavior. And in that's another issue I think with labeling.
Yeah.
If you consider yourself, well, I had a drink, now I got to have a bottle. You know, and that's not really true.
But if you were thinking in terms of, hey, this was just a lapse. This is just, I don't have to go all the way out, So easier said than done. But still, I think it is possible that people could just have a little lapse, learn from it.
Right. And realize that you're in very slippery territory when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it can be pretty dramatic in AA where you have to, you get a new chip and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and you got to stand up for 30 days and take a chip.
Yeah.
I know a few people who actually stopped going to AA because of that after a little lapse, and is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because they were just too embarrassed to stand up for 30 days again.
Yeah, I can understand that too. And the sponsorship thing too, because you said that SMART doesn't do sponsorship, AA does. I don't know if I'm so crazy about sponsorship, but I guess there could be some benefits to it. And you pointed out earlier that if you did both of them, you could take advantage of the sponsorship system in AA. Do you think there's advantages to the sponsorship system?
I think so. I think there is some use to someone with a lot of sobriety who's been through it to sort of take you under their wing and help you out. You can learn a lot from them and get some wisdom. Again, it's like anything. A lot of sponsors are different. One sponsor I know who was at my SMART meeting who was doing both. He had a sponsor going to AA and coming to my SMART meeting. His sponsor told him, you have to do SMART or AA. You can't do both. So he left AA. And
wow.
So sometimes you do run into sponsors who are, kind of fundamentalist bookers, whatever you want to call it. And
there's a lot of them out there, by the way. And that I have a concern about that. Sponsorship could be dangerous. It could be good though too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have someone that you can talk to outside of the meeting. Does that, by the way, happen in SMART? Do you kind of form relationships with people in the group that outside the meeting?
Yes, we do. It's not discouraged. SMART has the position that it is up to the individual how they socialize and who they socialize with. Kind of an interesting thing with SMART is we see a lot of people who are bringing in friends. They find out about the program, and of course they usually add using buddies or drinking buddies, and so they'll drag them along. So we often see a lot of people who were friends beforehand. It's kind of interesting.
That's good. And then, of course, the other difference is SMART is secular completely, whereas the 12-step programs are spiritually based.
Yeah. I mean, one of the issues with being, quote, spiritually based is, like when I first went to AA and 12-step, I was literally told I'm going to have to believe in and rely on a higher power, supernatural higher power. And it was just, I actually did. I actually studied a lot of theology and read about the history of religions and really worked hard to try to comply with the program. And ultimately sort of settled on something that, let's say the most secular alternative I could find. And, it was acceptable to my sponsor at the time.
Well, again, reading through, and I haven't read the entire handbook, but just the introductory part, it's, it talks about that a little bit. It says, hey, talk about whatever's important to you in your life. If religion, spirituality is important to you, fine. But it's not the default, I guess, where it is in AA. And, we even have a little bit of an issue in our secular AA meetings because there are a lot of people that are atheists, agnostics, whatever, who feel that this AA is still a spiritual program, and they assume that we all are spiritual like they are, and it causes a bit of a problem.
Yeah, one of the things I've shared at 12-step meeting is that just the word itself is so poorly defined. I mean, spirituality can refer to anything from religious rapture when you're speaking in tongues to just a sense of awe when you're looking at the Grand Canyon.
Exactly.
And anything in between. And it almost becomes meaningless or very vague. And then if you're, atheist, agnostic, you have a lot of wariness about the term, because for a lot of people it means, some sort of supernaturalism or woo. And, the best case scenario, if you look in the appendix of the big book, is spiritual awakening can be referred to as just a change in, a complete change in your attitude or outlook, and that is indeed true, going from drinking to being sober. That really is a major change in your outlook and attitude. And so, that's kind of what they were, trying to sell me, but then there's the praying and, all this other stuff. That's sort of, okay. It's,
I think the agnostic or secular AA meetings are a bit of an improvement over the traditional AA meetings, but still there's that, a lot of the stuff that we read, even our, agnostic, secular steps, are still kind of written, a lot of it with a kind of a spiritual language. And I see younger people sometimes that haven't had the experience in AA get a little disappointed because it's confusing. It's like, I don't need that, let's just have something in plain English that we can read. Whereas the people who've had the experience in traditional AA are more comfortable with that type of language. But in SMART, it's not even an issue.
Right. It is a literature and a philosophy from the 30s, from the Oxford group and that, Judeo-Christian sort of outline for how you should live. And it's got some good points, but it is, been there since long before cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that. Even psychiatry and psychology back then was more mystical based, with Carl Jung and the subconscious of Freud and that sort of thing. And so it is quite different than cognitive behavioral philosophy.
You want to talk a bit about the nuts and bolts of the cognitive behavioral therapy, the 4-point program,
Sure.
and how that works?
Well, cognitive behavioral therapy was developed again as a reaction to sort of the mysticism or subconscious motivational beliefs of psychiatry and psychology at the time, that to reflect that people really just needed practical ways and means to improve their life. Okay. Mm-hmm. Whether you had Freudian issues with your mother was, that's not going to affect how, you yelling at your wife now. What you need to do is learn how to get along. And so these cognitive behavioral techniques were developed to help us live, again, happy, healthy, productive lives. Mm-hmm. The several tools were developed along with that. One of the earliest that I could talk about is called the ABCs. Mm-hmm. In CBT therapy, there's a belief that a lot of your suffering and the way you are handling things in a negative manner is due to your beliefs about what things are happening versus what actually happens. Okay, the ABCs stands for an action that causes negative beliefs. And then the B's are beliefs, or what are your irrational beliefs about the event. Mm-hmm. And C is what are the consequences of that belief. And D is how you dispute those negative beliefs. And E is what is a more effective behavior. Like, for instance, a young lady came into my meeting, and she had an issue that was actually giving her a lot of cravings and feeling bad about herself, and she wanted to use. And so, okay, what happened? Let's unpack this. And what had happened is she had a boyfriend who she asked him, let's do something next Thursday. And he sort of gave her an ambiguous answer, and it was kind of clear that it's okay, we'll do something Thursday unless something better comes along. And that was kind of, I don't know the exact words, but that was basically what he meant. And so she felt terrible about this, that, and so she comes into the meeting all upset. And so, okay, here's the action, this ambiguous answer from her boyfriend. And what were her beliefs about what he did? And so she starts filling in the blanks. Okay, well, I feel like he's dismissing me. I'm not important to him. And then it can get into more irrationality, like I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm too fat. I'm too, and all these negative beliefs about ourselves. And the consequences of that is it's giving her cravings. It's making her feel bad about herself. And, she was, an addict, and her way to compensate with negative feelings was to get loaded. And so let's dispute those beliefs. Do you feel you're really unlovable? Is your weight really a big problem? And so no, I'm fine. I'm a good person. So all these positive things started coming out to dispute the negative things that she was telling herself. And I says, okay, well, what is an effective behavior for this? And it's kind of like it's kind of like a light came on. She goes, oh my God, I just have to, I can't have this guy in my life, and so, she's actually, kind of did end up sort of stopping dating him, and is doing fine now.
That's neat. So you took her through that process at the meeting that she came
Correct.
to. That's so cool.
Now, in SMART, occasionally you do go up to a blackboard or whiteboard or whatever you have. We have a whiteboard in our room.
Really?
And we actually plot this out and write this out. And if you look in the manual or the handbook, you'll see there are a lot of pages that have things where you write in. And
in fact, what I'm looking at right now is the tools page that you gave me, and I'm looking at the ABC problem-solving worksheet.
Right.
And you can actually go and type in on that thing all of the ABCDs, and you can reset it, use it again later, or print it out, whatever you need to do. It's kind of nice. Yeah. So I guess you would learn a tool like this, the ABCD tool, the ABC problem solving tool. So you could actually just do it on your own, even at home, right?
One of the issues with the ABC tool, and this is a belief of cognitive behavioral therapy in general, is we have sort of two modes of thinking in our brain. One is called type 1, and then there's type 2, or fast thinking versus slow thinking. Now, the fast thinking is our immediate emotions or cravings. We see a beer commercial, we get a craving to drink, okay? And that's sort of automatic and instantaneous. And the slow thinking is, again, disputing those cravings, or, basically it's your sort of frontal cortex kicking in and trying to regulate. The fast thinking is the more primitive, the pleasure-seeking centers, that sort of thing acting. Yep. And it's your cerebral cortex that tries to rein in the the desires that you have. And the ABCs obviously apply to your slow thinking. I mean, if someone, it's not the sort of thing you can, you might have to unpack after the event, but hopefully you'll do that before you pick up a drink or whatever.
And maybe sometimes slow thinking never kicks in for people. Maybe for me, sometimes if I'm not thinking about, all I do is just the first part, the immediate, and never really stop and do the slow thinking. So you kind of learn this to start doing that on a regular basis, I guess.
Right, and it's like anything; it takes a little practice and a little, consistency. I just read a thing on the curious case of Phineas Cage. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I have. Yeah.
Okay, how he got his frontal cortex injured, and he managed to survive it back then, but he had lost all self-control. He was sort of a regular guy who became a alcoholic and a gambler and womanizer and all this sort of stuff after this injury, and that is our higher centers, our cerebral cortex, hopefully trying to keep us under control. It's almost for the alcoholic or the addict, it's our brain fighting with itself.
So who came up with this stuff? Were the people that started SMART, were they like psychologists or psychiatrists?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember all the names offhand, but several
Okay.
people started this like in the mid 90s or so, and they were mostly mental health professionals who were thinking that the addiction establishment as is needed improvement, or they needed something additional, and sort of got together and started this program.
And also, I read that every SMART group or every SMART facilitator has a psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever that you can use as a consultant. So they're not necessarily in the meeting. Did I understand that right?
That's true. The different regions have different, again, professional sort of on call or that we have access to communicate with. SMART also has weekly sort of Skype group meetings where we can hash out problems or issues going on, and there's discussion. There's also a forum on smartrecovery.org that's just for facilitators and issues they may have, and you throw it up to the group. And there's also a Google group for facilitators where we go over these issues and have discussions about things. And so it's fairly easy to sort of, if you have issues going on, to hash them out.
Is it fairly common for like somebody like me who's has a lot of sobriety and been in AA for a while to try SMART? I mean, it's like I'm not like I wonder if they would welcome me, because I'm not like struggling with I don't want to drink or anything, but I do think that these tools could help me in my daily life.
I think that's a very good point. I should mention that the SMART program is considered like a 4-point program. It's building and maintaining motivation, coping with urges, managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and achieving lifestyle balance.
Right.
Now, 1 and 2 there are probably more important for newcomers, and 3 and 4 really are more for people, with a little bit of time. And although there's certainly a lot of admixture with those points, but like for instance, things like boyfriends dissing you is going to happen regardless of how much sobriety you have, and it can help you to deal with those issues. And so it is just a program for anybody. And I have had a few people come in who do have significant time, and they're generally very welcome, and they do have a lot to contribute to the group because they do have more time.
Yeah, because I definitely want to. I was checking out meetings in Kansas City, and there are a few, but I found that most of them are like at the VA centers, and they're actually closed for the veterans in the centers. But there is a meeting like in the suburbs that I could get to, and I think I might try to go to that just to have an experience of what it's like, and also try it online. But I almost want to have some respect for the people that are there. I don't want to just go as just out of curiosity, but because I know that people, when I came to AA, I was coming because I really needed some serious help.
Well, no, you'd certainly be welcome. I think, when they do the check-in, just mention, your name and that you've been to AA for X number of years and you've been doing well, but just wanted to check out what SMART is about. And, you can remain silent and just listen, but I'm sure you'll have a lot of wisdom to impart to the group.
Okay. Well, this really is fascinating. So what else kind of tools through the 4-point system, the 4 points, what do you want to talk about?
Okay, well, talking about point 1, building and maintaining motivation. As you know, when a newcomer comes, they may have doubts about their drinking problem and stuff. That they really may not be very motivated to get sober. They might just be there on a court card. Who knows?
Right.
So what the chapter 3 in the SMART handbook gives a bit of a formula. They start out with a tool, they call it the hierarchy of values. And this is another useful tool to do at the whiteboard when at a meeting, is you ask one of the people who are trying to get sober to list their values. And you'll almost invariably, people will value They want a loving relationship. They want a good family relationship. They want to be good to their kids. They want a nice career. They want a PhD, or they generally value typical significant things. And so you go, okay, well, where's alcohol on this list? Because that's obviously been the most important thing to you. That's how you're behaving. Everything else is a far second compared to your drinking, because you're sacrificing, all of these values for getting drunk. And people often kind of don't think about it, that's what they're doing. So you can go over, what they can add the 3 questions to that. What do I want for my future? Now, most people invariably say, I don't want to die from liver failure on Skid Row. They say, well, I'd like to have a nice family and a home and, a nice job, etc. And what am I currently doing to achieve that? And then you ask them, how do they feel about that? And, most people will leave that process feeling like, what I've been doing and what I say I want to do are 180 degrees apart.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll give them enough motivation to come back to a meeting and, put the plug in the jug. And another thing they do for the maintaining motivation is what's called the change plan worksheet. And what that is, it's just a simple tool to put realistic goals for what you want to do. Let's say on your value list, you put, I want to get a PhD in some subject. And okay, so on your change plan worksheet, you put, well, first thing is register for college, and make it simple, small steps. So it doesn't seem so daunting, like I can never do this, Make a series of small steps that are doable and hopefully measurable. Like by next month, I want to have applications into, so many colleges and start working on that. Another great tool for the first point is what's called the cost-benefit analysis. Now, one thing, and this is often a contrast with 12-step groups, is people hear a lot of drunkalogs and horror stories, 12-step.
Right.
Whereas when people come to SMART, we kind of want them to recognize that you're not being irrational. You're not being, there's reasons why you may have maybe drinking. And so we do what's called a cost-benefit analysis. And again, you just sort of draw a T and go up on the board and ask people to list, what are your benefits? And people will say, well, I like to feel a little buzz. I think it gives me, I think I'm funnier. It gives me courage. It elevates my mood. Whatever sort of benefit that they get. So you're not made to feel like you're just being a crazy drunk by your behavior. Okay. And then we put on the other side of the thing, what are the costs of doing this? And then we add hangovers, DUIs, death, liver failure, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing you need to do is point out that these benefits that you're getting all tend to be immediate and really short-lived. Yeah. Okay. And all the consequences are deferred down the road. The hangover is the next day. The liver failure may be years from now. Losing the job might be months from now. So the costs of your behavior, it's a little harder to see. But again, I literally encourage my meeting members to keep a copy of their cost-benefit analysis on them. And when they're really getting a craving, or if they're in a slippery situation, pull it out and read it. And, maybe it's a helpful tool for them.
It's interesting. I'm looking at the worksheet right now. And so on the top part, it says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using or doing? And then the bottom of the sheet says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of not using and doing? So hopefully, you'll do this thing and you'll see that your advantages of not are heavier on the bottom and your disadvantages are heavier on the top.
Correct. Again, all of the disadvantages of using, again, are long-term, and most of the advantages of not using are also long-term. And So it's again, it's a hard thing to see. You got to be a little disciplined, and it's like I tell some people the classic thing is smoking, because the benefits might be I get a little mood elevation, it decreases my stress or whatever, and the disadvantages tend to be less, but very long term, and it's hard for people to see that. I mean, that's what killed Bill Wilson,
Right.
The disadvantages are years down the road. Lung cancer. I have two brothers-in-law died from lung cancer, and it was useless telling them to quit smoking, a couple decades ago. But if people at least keep it in their awareness that there are long-term consequences, hopefully it'll help their present behavior.
That's a good point, because it's not necessarily the number of the disadvantages, but like if one disadvantage is that you die, then that would probably outweigh all of the other advantages that you might have doing that thing. So this is really interesting.
Yeah. Another, so often doing those sort of 3 tools and stuff can often get people, at least started in the program and at least started to, stay sober. Of course, point 2, coping with urges, that comes along for anybody, anytime. And this is why I encourage AA people to come to SMART, because no matter what you believe in, you're going to struggle with urges and cravings and things. So there's some simple tools that they got. Again, like I mentioned, the reading your cost-benefit analysis or hierarchy of values is useful. When you get an urge, again, that involves slow thinking versus your immediate urge. And they encourage urge log, try to figure out what your triggers are and hopefully avoid them. And, they teach that urges are not all powerful. They may feel that way at the time, but they will pass, and you can bear with them for a while. They have a little thing that they call the DEADS. The D is for deny or delay the urge. Just remember it'll pass. E is escape. If you're at a party where they're serving drinks and you're getting nervous and getting cravings, just leave. So escape. A can be avoid triggers, and D is distraction, a very important thing. If you get an urge and you're bored, just do something. You go for a walk, go to a meeting, do what you need to do just to distract yourself. Now, they also have a tool that they call DISARM, which is, in my opinion, the worst acronym out of SMART. It's DISARM, Destructive Images and Self-Talk Refusal Method. Okay. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I believe happens with any addiction is you nurture or develop an inner voice that wants to sabotage your recovery. I think a lot of people can relate to a voice telling them, oh, it's okay to have a drink. It's okay to just do one, use once, and then you'll be back to normal. And you deserve a break. It's this little voice in our head that wants to sabotage us. And what we do is we'll have people sort of recognize that they will have this voice and to treat it as such, to realize some people will give it a name like their inner monster or their inner addict. And they're able to, dispute or talk back to that voice. It says, I know what'll happen if I drink, screw you.
It's just like, that's just like brain activity. It's just like, it's not, you don't have to actually act upon it.
Right.
You can stop and think, okay, this is just this guy talking to me, trying to convince me to do something that's not going to be good for me. Because we will have thoughts. I mean, I don't care how long you don't drink or drug or gamble or whatever. I mean, you're always going to have a time where that voice will come into your head. That guy's going to try to talk you into doing that thing.
Yeah, another thing I'll tell people, just to be encouraging, especially newcomers, is that voice gets less common, not as assertive and shorter lasting. The voice diminishes with time.
Very true. I agree with that. That's my experience anyway, and I haven't even done SMART before. But yeah, I had loud screaming voices in the first few weeks, and now I just have a little whisper once in a while. Yeah.
So that's the thing I think most people can relate to. And again, I encourage anybody who wants to go to the meetings to go if they think these things can help them out.
Yeah, I think that people in the secular AA movement, I don't think a lot of them have a lot of experience with SMART, but I think they would be open to doing this in conjunction with AA. I don't think that a lot of the people in traditional AA, if they're really buying the party line, unfortunately, are going to want to do it, because a lot of people in AA, they get so damn dogmatic about this is it. If you do anything outside of this, like you mentioned, the guy with the sponsor who says you can't do both. I think you can do both.
Yeah, I agree. And we get some recovery homes and rehab centers, that bring in groups once in a while. And I really try to encourage getting familiar with AA and getting used to it, because a lot of them come from out of area, and they'll probably be going back to areas of the country that don't even have SMART. And so get along with AA and take what you need and leave the rest. You don't have to believe anything. Even the big book says it's to be meant as a suggestion only.
If enough of them do start going to meetings, they could actually help change the culture of AA too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you're right. There's sort of one of the things about the secular movement in AA is, again, another name for atheists and agnostics and things, is free thinkers, and the free thinkers are more open to alternative modes of recovery. And I think if SMART can benefit you, check it out.
Absolutely. And how is there are a lot of SMART meetings out there, and it's no accident, I don't think, that around in my community they're mostly at the VA, because I bet you the government is wanting people wanting to use secular alternatives and not like they used to probably use AA more than they probably don't use AA that much anymore.
Part of the problem I've heard, again, this is something I just read a while ago, is that the recovery industry, in order to continue to get compensation from the government and things, may have to shift to more science-based plans. And so SMART is more science-based. There is a body of research. Again, as you know, research in recovery issues is very poor, and you can almost believe whatever you want to believe, and find some studies to back you up. But
does SMART do any follow up and try to keep statistics? Because AA absolutely doesn't. Does SMART do any of anything like that?
Again, there have been some studies and stuff. I could email you a link. There was a good study out of Australia recently where SMART seems to be spreading a little more rapidly. Where they worked in prisons with patients with who were in prison for drug-related offenses, and there was a lower recidivism rate for the prisoners who had gone through SMART recovery while in their prison than with 12-step. So there is some, again, studies are real hard to come by and real hard to control, but there is some evidence that it is useful.
Yep. I read a book, and I talk about this book too much. It works if you work it anyway. They talked about this Project Match, where they actually studied cognitive behavioral therapy along with 12-step facilitation, and cognitive behavioral therapy was very useful. And basically, I think what the study found was that it's a mixed bag. It's not like one approach is right for every one person or everybody. It's a mixed bag approach that people should take. And I think that study found pretty much what you described in your article, that the strength of the AA or the 12-step facilitation treatment was the support that you get from the other people, because there's so many people.
Right.
Involved.
And I certainly, there's a gentleman who comes to my meeting who's a regular, been there over a year, who got sober in AA 16 years ago. And he just says, I've made tons of friends there. I've never worked the steps. I've never secretaried a meeting, never did any, I've just made a lot of good friends. And that's what kept them sober. So, the bottom line is even Bill Wilson had a different program than Dr. Bob. And so, you need to have your program, and so do what works for you, and use what's out there. And again, the community support of AA can be, it's there, it's ubiquitous. Why not use it?
Absolutely, and why not use SMART too? I'll say as well. So, Steve, thank you very much for this. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to be learning more about SMART. Maybe we can talk again someday in the future. And if you ever want to write another article, we'd love to have that.
Terrific.
Have you do that.
Okay.
So thank you for that contribution very much.
Okay. Let me just mention, if somebody wants to say hello, check in on my website. Just go to ocsmart.org. That's my website that I run for the County SMART, and my email is there. So
you've done a great job with that website, by the way. We'll put a link to that on the podcast when we publish it. But you did a really good job with that. You're also the webmaster, aren't you? You did a good job with
thanks.
that.
Yeah, I plunked down a 3-year thing for it and paid cash in advance, so it'll be up there for a while.
Good. All right, Steve. Well, I enjoyed it.
All right.
Yep.
All right,
have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. We'll be back soon. Until then, be well.